Thank you. Good evening. Obviously the last shift of the day. This particular week has coincided quite well. It's actually our year end. But what I'll do is talk a bit about the business and maybe talk about our financial performance. We're actually quite a traditional company in the sense we've been making profit for the last 30 years. We're an engineering company. We design, we produce, and we service everything in the UK, and we manufacture everything that we make is made down in Bradford and Avon in Wiltshire. So, just for those who haven't been to Bradford and Avon in Wiltshire, there's a little blue dot in the bottom there. But we basically are in the automotive area, but you won't find any of our products on a production car. But the chances are that any car you might drive, any truck you might have been in, would at some time been developed using machinery given by Dynamics. It was founded way back in 1982 by Anthony Best, and he was very much involved in the suspension, noise, vibration, harshness, advanced chassis design. That's what he did. But in the late 90s, you could see that all of the car production, all the car development was being taken offshore. It was all going overseas. And there was more opportunity to be able to make machines that could actually do the things that he was consulting on. And since then, he was basically, with his team, he grew the team, and he was able to make a number of acquisitions and a number of inroads into the business. But in about 2011, he found himself in a situation where he really couldn't get his directors to take the business from him. And he tried a few aborted trade sales, and he sought the solace of AIM. He was that desperate. I joined the company in 2012. And what I could see with that company was not just innovation, but a huge amount of creation. The company had gone through several creative steps and actually made quite big jump changes. I could also see that actually it was very good at turning ideas into money. In fact, it was exceptionally good at turning ideas into money. And bear in mind that 95% of the products that we now sell go overseas. You can imagine that Brexit's been a bit of a boon for us. One thing I would say is that when we listed on AIM back in May 2013, we were one of the first of the companies to dip the toe back in the market. And at that time, we went in at about 86p. And today, we're actually just marked up at £4.90. So it's been a pretty good growth story for us. And we joined AIM for the right reasons. There were two things. One is we needed some money for the actual business to develop. And the second thing, there was an opportunity for the older shareholders to be able to sell down. It's a very strong focus. We produce high-end, high-quality products, and all of the R&D divisions of all the car companies around the world will be buying and using our products on a daily or even weekly basis. And in the last couple of weeks, we've just gone over the 90 employee mark as well. You're talking to me, myself, the Chief Executive. I had experience in AIM and NASDAQ-listed companies. Like I said, I joined the company back in October 2012. We have the finance officer, Rob Hart, and we have Tony still in the business, working 2 to 3 days a week. He's a non-exec chairman, but I still value his input. He's still incredibly knowledgeable about the industry. And a lot of the younger engineers get a lot of benefit from his expertise. He's seen it, he's done it, he knows it. In terms of the highlight for the end of the year, we've continued to grow the business. We've had a 24% increase in our revenues. We use the word adjusted profit because we offered a share benefit scheme to our staff recently, so we're bearing a £273 charge to our balance sheet. But the underlying profit of the company still remains high, a 23% increase. And in fact, our margins, operating margins, are up around about 23%. So it's a highly profitable company, highly cash generative. This year, our cash flow was 4.1 million, and we're holding around about 11 million of cash in our account. We've also been, from the moment we joined the stock market, we've been a dividend payer. I guess at a share value of £5, then actually 3p doesn't look like much. But when we first went to the market, we went to the market at 86p, and I guess 3p is not too bad. And our order book, we have great visibility on our order book. In fact, we can see right forward to the third quarter of our financial year. And at any given time, we are engaged in and working with car companies all around the world. So we have fairly good visibility on where our orders may be coming and might not be coming. And that's always been very encouraging to me. Operationally, we've expanded the company. We've expanded into Japan and into Germany and the UK. We've opened up new technical centres. Almost a week after we did the Brexit, we actually employed a German commercial director. I have to say that was something that we've been working on for about a year. But one of the things you do notice is that the German companies do like to buy from German companies. And having a German organisation has enabled us to be at the top table because the car companies get together and they talk. And we've never been in those conversations. And if we truly want to be strategic and we want to still create these new products for the marketplace, we need to be in Germany. And then early on this year, we entered into a partnership with Williams F1 to bring into the market a vehicle simulator. The whole of the market is moving, is changing. It's so diverse, the automotive research market. It is quite incredible. And one of the areas they're moving into is something that probably has been done in pharmaceuticals for many years. There's much more virtual testing. There's much more testing in the virtual space, cutting out the prototyping. One day they aspire to be able to do total virtual sign-off from design straight to car production. And also, one of the things we also decided to do is that we needed to build a new facility. The old facility we have is too small, it's too cramped. We are a Bradford-Avon company. The epicenter of where all our staff live is in the West Country. And so we embarked upon quite an ambitious build. And we should be finishing that factory in August 2017. And that will effectively triple our capacity. The drivers of our business is the global spending on automotive R&D. I'm just going to go forward a bit. So you can see that last year, $109 billion was spent by the R&D industry, by the automotive industry on R&D. And that's pretty close to where they are with the healthcare, and not too far behind where they are with consumer electronics and computing. It is massive. It's also incredibly diverse. You've got to imagine what a car consists of these days. There's everything from infotainment systems, driving systems, luxury systems, engines, emission control. And if you look at the top 20 companies in terms of R&D spend, 6 of the companies are automotive companies. And at the very top is the Volkswagen Group. And boy, do they need it. The issue they've got to face really is that they're either going to research their way out of their problems or they're going to have to do something slightly more radical. The other thing that's driving the growth is the geography. In our annual report, you'll see a sort of split out of what's happening. So the traditional markets of Japan and Germany and America still drive the R&D growth, or still drive the R&D spending. But China's come into the mix. And what China wants to do is not necessarily make cars for export. It wants to make cars that are more desirable for its own population. Because if you're an aspiring Chinese businessman, you don't buy the Chinese car, you buy the European or Western derivative. And making cars pleasing and more pleasant to drive is really what it's all about. And you need a toolkit, and the toolkit comes from companies like ourselves. As a result, that's where we're seeing a huge increase in growth. The business is not immune to the cycles of the world. You can see that back in 2008, 2009, there was a bit of inertia. And for ABD, basically, the tap got turned off. It was the first year that the company went into almost zero profit. But all the staff was kept on, and it managed to drive itself out of the business. And it said basically since 2010, it's had year-on-year growth of 20% by revenue. And these are all the businesses that we deal with. And this graph represents the larger the name, the more we have sold to them in the last 10 years. And you can see that Toyota, Ford, and Daimler, and Volvo, they feature in there. But also, you'll start to see other companies like Bosch and Continental. Because equally, these guys are also developing car technology. And most of the driverless and autonomous car development is done by these peripheral companies. And that's where we've seen the most rapid growth. It's selling our tools for the development of autonomous cars. And we'll come on to that in a minute. Also in there, perhaps too small to see, is a couple of Chinese names. And these are companies that here in the West we've never heard of, but when we actually look at them, they're making more cars than Renault. They are huge, and there are over 100 car companies in China. And in fact, my distributor in China told me the other day, he has 25 salespeople just dedicated to my products. That's how big the opportunity is. So what do we do? What do we make? There is a kind of circle here. If you're a car manufacturer and you're designing the first car, most of your design starts with the mathematical modeling. And that mathematical modeling is derived from technology like the track testing equipment, the driving robots. So we've been doing driverless cars for 15 years. But our robots can drive cars in a very consistent and accurate manner. And that is an absolute boon to the engineer because it gives him the data he needs in a consistent way to start to populate the mathematical models. At the bottom, we also sell quite large measurement equipment. These are about £2 million pieces of kit. And they give very accurate feedback as to the chassis dynamics and how the car behaves. All of that information is fed to the computer, and it allows the designer to start to create the car. Then he goes to the prototyping stage, and that's when the driver gets back in and starts driving it again. And then it goes back through the measurement, validation, back to the prototyping. And a lot of the question is, wouldn't it be nice if at a certain point in time we can get the driver back in the loop, that we can actually get the driver to drive the mathematical model? And that's where the simulator comes from. And this has happened for years now inside of Formula One. Formula One were restricted on the amount of testing they were allowed to do, amount of prototyping they were allowed to get involved in, to try and make it more fair for the smaller teams. Because what the bigger teams did is actually make themselves super-duper simulators, which actually became so accurate that the majority of the car development is actually done in the simulator. And that is truly the driver back in the loop. And what our goal is here is to take the Formula One simulator and make an automotive-grade product. There already are some people out there doing this, but there aren't that many people who actually can bring together the whole loop. So we have a distributor model, but what we have done of late is put the engineers into the field. So we have engineers based in Japan to support our distributor. We have engineers based in Germany, and we've recently invested in engineers in the USA. But the distributor model works for us quite well. In fact, for many of our distributors, we actually represent almost their sole business. And it's quite important because, as I said to you before, our key is the relationships that we have with our partners in the customers. If you look at some of the relationships we have with people like Daimler, they go back 30 years. That's a very niche business. It's very hard to break. It's very hard to get into. There's a trust that has to be built between you and them. They're relying on you to help them with their car development. It doesn't do to go down cheap on this. If you go down cheap, you end up with car-shaped holes at the end of test tracks. And what we do, and what we have in spades, is a very strong team of mechanical design, electronics and electrical software, all in-house. Nothing is subbed out. All our design is done internally, and I believe you have those three disciplines together, you can actually do what we do, which is make machines to test cars. We have dedicated manufacturing facilities. We've had to increase our capacity 3 times in the last 4 years. We have electronics assembly, we have dedicated electronic areas, workshops. We don't actually have machinists, what we have is tool makers, and they're a bit of a dying breed. But most of the prototyping that we do is done via the tool making and by the design group. And what we're building at the moment is a large new factory, which is targeted for completion in Q3, and that will triple our space. And one of the things we've had to do in terms of breaking it across 4 sites is that the company doesn't work very well that way. It works much better when we're all under one roof. There's much more synergy between the groups. And this is an area of sort of concern to me, and hopefully we can rectify that this year and next year. So what is the partnership with Williams about? I mean, basically, it's an immersive graphics system. It's a motion platform that's incredibly dynamic. And the whole key to making simulation work is making sure that what you see on the screen and what you're feeling is happening at the same time. Any more than a 25 millisecond delay and you'll start to feel sick, and you will feel sick. In fact, simulated sickness takes ages to get over. And the way that Williams solve it is they have to put the poor driver onto a bicycle and ask him to pedal around the car park until he feels better. Because what he's kind of doing is re-cueing his whole vestibular system. And a simulator, by definition, is a vestibular trick. You are passing very high resolution graphics in front of him with motion cueing that represents what he may be feeling if he was driving his car in a real condition. And there's a lot you can get from this, and this is really quite cutting edge. And these are £2-3 million machines, which we hope to introduce in the market this year. And the key thing for the customer is that it helps in the development of models, and it reduces the development time and reduces the amount of prototypes that are required. A lot of mistakes are made at prototyping stage, and this is something that this kind of machine can avoid. I mentioned our factory. I can't believe we got away with a modern factory in Bradford-on-Avon, but we did. Now that it's being built, I think the locals are waking up to it. But it is big, and the whole idea is that our customers include people like Porsche and Daimler and Toyota. And I always got the feeling that they were always a bit disappointed when they came to see our shed in the field. And we see how they do it in Germany, and we see how they do it in Scandinavia and in Japan. And this is really going to be something that we're going to be very proud of. It's going to help us a lot in the business. So the highlights. So we've been growing, and we have. Our revenues grow. This is all organic growth, by the way. We reinvest a lot of our money back into R&D. We have a very strong, solid pipeline. We have 40 engineers in terms of mechanical and software engineers, and we're very proud of our manufacturing, and we've been able to, using dedicated manufacturing and new manufacturing techniques, we've been able to raise that margin. We've been able to raise that margin in quite a significant degree. If you want to analyse some of the revenue, it's quite broadly and quite evenly split. My broker wanted to make the right-hand donut bigger because that would represent a bigger pie. But you can see that Japan and Europe and China, they do represent quite a big part of the business. It's quite well balanced. And disappointingly, the UK is getting smaller and smaller. Although we keep hearing about this renaissance in the UK car industry, they are not spending a huge amount of money on R&D. You go to places like Daimler, the Singlefingen, where their big offices are, where there are R&D offices, there are 10,000 development engineers in that one place. They point across the way at the car park at a £25 million engine test facility and a new place they're building. It's just, I'm not sure if we're kidding ourselves, but I'm just giving a picture of where the R&D spend is going. And Japan still remains one of the most innovative groups in terms of spend. China's catching up. What China's trying to do is invest in tools, and that's why we're seeing such a rapid increase in sales there. And like I said, there's nearly 100 OEMs that need to be dealt with over the next few years, and that's where a lot of effort from our companies going in. We split the business broadly into two. We've got the what we call the lab testing, which is the large, lumpy pieces of kit that people like to call that. And then we've got the track testing, which is the whole vehicle testing on the track. The track testing not only is growing faster, but it's also the most profitable in our portfolio. But the hope is that by generating these new products and having the facilities at the new factory to build, that lab testing pie would kind of readjust itself. Go back 4 years, and that was pretty much split 50-50. And the little red one at the top is the vestiges of what the company used to do, which is consultancy in noise and vibration. So it's still there. I don't kill it, because once you've got rid of it, you never get it back. And our margin. You've got to be careful with margins. If anything above 23-24%, and you are flogging the company hard. We had a big problem, catch-up problem with trying to get capacity in place. And a lot of those higher margins were generated by the fact we simply didn't have the facilities, and we were just working it really hard. If you want to create a sustainable business, you do not want to knacker out your staff. As it turns out, we have staff, and we have almost zero turnover. The engineers we bring in on a regular basis stay with the company. Two reasons for that. I think we can give them a very attractive workplace to be. I think joining the market was very good because we now give them equity-based investments. They can be part of the company. But more importantly, it's a lifestyle choice to be in the Southwest. People like it. They stay down there. And it suits them really well. And our assets, well, most of that asset is cash. We've got about 11 million on the books. But also we're going to be swapping that asset for £7 million is going to be going out in the next 12 months on the new factory. But we can replenish that with about 4.5 of new cash coming in. Employees, as I said, we've been growing the company steadily. We've just passed, literally this week, a 91 landmark. And we still require, there's still a shortage of engineers out there. We compete against Dyson. He's been sucking everything in that you can find, excuse the pun. But I think that the issue is that engineers who work for us like the innovation and creativity of a smaller company. And I think that's what we can offer in spades. And I said we're dividend payers. We've been able to increase the dividend year on year. And also our reported earnings per share, again, has been a nice steady increase. So a summary, we're a very strong company, strong financially. What I think we've been able to do in the last few years is get these new R&D programs working properly and motoring through the organisation. And perhaps more in this very sort of difficult times for many people, we've got a very good platform for future growth. And I think I'll conclude at that point. Thank you very much.
Okay, so happy to take any questions now. We've got one at the back. Can we go number one? Do you want to go first?
What developments in car design will drive your company's growth over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the entry of the new companies, the tech companies, are going into this space. This year we've made our first sale to a significant large Californian tech company. There are many other people looking at this space. If you have a lot of cash and you're looking at the whole electrification of the vehicle and the driverless car concepts, and you haven't got a big legacy issue in terms of engine plants and unions, this actually is quite an attractive space to go into. So I think there's going to be quite a strong switch in terms of new entrants coming in from the tech side. And to do that, they're going to have to tool themselves up with ABD equipment. That's my big vision. And they don't seem to be short of cash.
And one question here as well.
Your company is quoted on the AIM market.
Yes.
At the moment.
Thank you. Thank you for that. The at the moment I like.
You mentioned that, yes. And I think it would be right. I would be right in saying that the general impression about AIM is that it is higher risk than the full market, the official lists, and companies tend to fail more frequently, generally speaking, when they are quoted on the AIM market than the official list. Does your company have any plans to move to the official list?
No. I think AIM suits us really well. We've got a nice retail following. We've got some really nice long-term investors. When we originally went onto the market, we qualified for VCT EIS. That came off recently after 3 years. There was no sign of selling down on that. Whenever we're going to need to raise cash, I'm sure we'll be able to raise cash. There's a very passionate set of shareholders. I mean, this week has been the year end, and I've been round to, this is my 15th meeting today, started at 8. And all the people that invested in us are thrilled with our performance, are very encouraging. I think it's an exciting market to be on. I think there's some really good companies on AIM. I think that the lighter touch on the regulation is very useful to us. If we were to join the main market, I have no idea what it cost us as an overhead. For me, it cost me about £130,000 a year to be on AIM. What's not to like?
Yeah, and can I follow on that point? Are you likely to raise additional capital in the foreseeable future?
Well, that would be telling. I don't think we joined AIM to slay, we didn't join the stock market just to stay in the slow lane.
Right.
There has been a period of consolidation. What we have been able to do for the last 3.5 years is broadly exceed the analyst forecasts, which is why we've seen these big jumps in share value. And there will come a time when if we do want to go to the next stage of the growth, we'll have to look to the markets for placing, maybe. The only thing is, because it takes you a long time to get the right management structure in place. It's taken a long time for me to get the operational structure working and then bring the corporate structure in place. Getting it wrong now would be a disaster. It would be an absolute disaster. I'd rather make sure that we keep the cash coming in, that we keep the product cycle working, and that if an opportunity comes along that looks right for us, do it that way, rather than have a sort of acquisitive buy and build strategy. Have a sort of one of the things the three things we're strong at is design, channels to market, and manufacturing. And there are plenty of people in that pond fishing where we are, but for different fish that we could go after.
Tim, I was just going to say, very good presentation. Very much enjoyed it. Wanted to ask you, you talk about the importance of your staff.
Yes.
And the importance of the people who work at AB Dynamics. Are you able to offer apprenticeships to get those skilled people and get them trained up to how you need them? You
know what we did, and we do. But I have to say, disappointingly, last week we closed an advert on an apprenticeship programme, and there were 2 applicants.
Disappointing.
Yeah, very disappointing, considering that 3. Are you putting yourself forward? And yet we advertised recently for a receptionist and had 120 applicants. What
does that tell you?
I don't know. I'm not sure what it tells me. The thing is, we've been trying to engage much more with the schools. People do not take engineering seriously in this country. And that's a shame. And years ago, when I used to work for Exxon, it was all about getting people into science. And I still don't see it. I don't understand it. When we get these, the other day we had 2 girls came from the 6th form college, and they're working on an electrical car program. And they spent 2 days with our engineers, and they're strapping guys, what not to like about them. And they said, we had no idea that engineering could be so fun. And I said, well, who's been telling you? Who's been telling you it's not going to be fun? And it really, really annoys me. And what really annoys me at the moment is that if you look at the Bath engineer capture at the moment, the Bath graduates going through, 95% of them are foreign. And I haven't got any access to them at all. And that really annoys me, because we're training the talent and we're sending them off-site. Sorry, you got me in a real sweet spot there.
Thank you.
Okay, no, cool.
Tim, thank you for that. 2 questions. First of all, you mentioned the field engineers. Are they uniquely focused on the sales side or after-sales support in terms of the service business?
Both. What you notice when a company goes through a certain point of growth is that you go from everyone doing everything, but then you suddenly find that the sort of senior software engineer is handling sales calls, when actually he should be developing new products. And I think you always go through this point in a company where you have to say, no, actually you need offline support. So that's what we've been setting up. And it's very good as well, because sometimes when you're on the phone to a customer, you're hearing what he thinks he's seeing on the screen. But what you need is one of our guys over there doing the same work. So what has happened in the last 18 months is there's much more in the way of separated R&D and development. We've now created business groups inside the company. We've promoted the engineers internally to head up those groups. And their responsibility is to make sure that they're working on the product planning. They've got some kind of roadmap as to where things are going. And the senior engineers are there to enable that to happen. And that actually is kind of an upside-down hierarchy, but it works really well. So the people who should know about it are in the right place. And what we've also discovered is that we need to have these support staff, because we've got 500 robot systems out there. Every week, another 10 go out. There's another 10 that need supporting, and they don't wear out.
So on that basis, you've got a significant and growing installed base.
Yes.
What presently is the percentage revenue from after sales in that regard?
Well, our recurring revenue was, when we first went to market, was 6%, and today it's 10, and I don't reckon it's going to go up much more than that. And at the end of the day, we're unashamedly a capital goods company. That's what we sell. That's what we do.
Okay, still time for one more very quick question.
Who are your main institutional investors?
That's a good question. Who have I seen today? We've got companies like Hargreave Hale, Artemis. We used to have Miton. But
Artemis VCT?
yeah, and also the standard Artemis fund as well. Amati, a bit of a Scottish flavour coming on here. We've got quite a lot of strange, I don't say strange, but there's quite a lot of American companies suddenly. We've got one called Grandeur Peak, who've suddenly bought 3%, and they're kind of a group based in Salt Lake City. There's another group in New Zealand that's bought quite a big stock holding in us. So we've got quite a big global appeal. And our brokers are actually very effective at actually finding fairly interesting and unique investors. But we've also got a big retail tail. In fact, actually, when we were posting out the annual reports yesterday, it was 1,000. So there were 1,000 companies. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's brilliant. All right, Tim.